Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship. So before we get started with today's video, I was just looking at some prices of apartments, and it's pretty insane what's being charged for a one bed, one bath nowadays. I think when I first came to Georgia, the prices of maybe a one bed, one bath was probably around 700, 800, or maybe 1,000 at most. And it seems like on average, these are going for 1,500 at least. And one of the reasons I actually bought a house was because I just did a simple comparison in my head. Okay, one bed, one bath for 721 square feet for 1,500, or, you know, $1,200 a month for three bed, three bath. And I was just like, I'm gonna buy a house, right? Worth it. Okay, well, aside from that, let's actually get into the topic of today. We're just gonna do a simple version of velocity banking. So I just have a very simple budget. I've just been using these tax calculators to figure out how much monthly salary would be. So as you can see here, 75,000 annual in Georgia after tax is about 4680, right? So I'll just put 4700 here. So if you make about 75,000, that's probably what you would make after tax as a W-2 employee. Now, given there are other things you can do to reduce this tax number, talk to your accountant. My understanding is the best way to reduce your taxes and increase your income. Again, I'm not giving you accounting advice, is to start your own business, right? But talk to an accountant about that. But we're just going to do a simple scenario. And first of all, let's go over what is velocity banking. Velocity banking is a debt payoff strategy where you're using lines of credit as your main tool, right? And you only need to do two things to do velocity banking. You got to have a budget, and you got to have a line of credit as your main operating account. And let's just assume that we make that 75 grand a year income. We have decent expenses, like not too crazy, and we only have three loans, right? So velocity banking is a debt payoff strategy. Let's say this person was really smart and didn't get a student loan, right? Like, you ever hear young people say, I'm not going to get a student loan? I think the only time they'll ever do that is if they were like hardcore listeners to the Dave Ramsey show when they were young, right? Whereas the average American, I've seen cases where it's like, oh, I got a degree in sociology and I have over $100,000 in student loans. It's like, what? Right? And then if you're a doctor or lawyer, that's really common. But let's say this person was smart and got a pretty decent paying job and no student loan, right? Student loan is a wealth killer, okay? But maybe they got a little reckless with $17,000 in credit card debt and a mortgage. But we only have three debts here, and this is why it's really simple, because every other scenario that I do is like, I don't know, around five debts on average. I think I did a scenario with like 10 debts. If you have a lot of credit card debt but a lot of income, that's a really easy scenario to cover. But we're just going to do only three debts today. And here's the thing: if you don't have any debt, let's say that you have $4,700 in income and you have $4,700 of general expenses. This is not for you, right? Like, velocity banking is a debt payoff strategy. It's not an income generation strategy, right? Now, obviously, there are ways that you can reduce your expenses. Like, I go out to the supermarket and buy, I buy stuff that I probably don't need at the supermarket, right? Because I'm just a little bit careless with your money, and that's what happens when you make more money too. You just become a little bit more careless. But we're gonna assume two things: same income, no savings. And a lot of people will freak out of that. They're like, I need my savings every single month. Okay. Now, here's the thing: if you got savings, and there are people like this out there, where they have a $20,000 in savings and they got $20,000 in credit card debt. And if you have $20,000 in savings, think about what the max that will be. Probably 4% on those high yield accounts that you see online. But if your credit card debt has an interest rate of 20%, might as well just pay off that credit card debt, right? But again, this is just basic apples to apples math. Um, okay, so zero savings. Why? Because we're going to put our entire paycheck into our line of credit, and the only difference between this column and this column is what is your operating account. For people who do velocity banking, your line of credit is your operating account, not your checking account. In this scenario, we're using your checking account to pay for things. Now, we're not broke, right? Like, we're doing pretty well. If the average American had $1,700 a month in savings, they'd be doing good. Because there are people out there who, if they have a $400 emergency, they've been screwed. And they've been doing studies at least since 2014 where they notice, oh, if the average American had a $400 emergency, bad times, right? So let's go ahead and do this. And we're just going to do a little re-engineering of our expenses. And credit card debt is usually the debt that we should get rid of first because it eats up into our cash flow and it has the most interest. So let's go ahead and get rid of it. And let's just pretend, okay, that at the bank they give us a $20,000 personal line of credit. $20,000, right? $20,000 personal line of credit. It's kind of like a credit card, but in some ways it's better, in some ways it's not. Because with this personal line of credit, I can use it to pay anything, right? Can you use a credit card to pay anything right off the bat without going through some hoops? No, you can't. Like, I can't pay a mortgage with a credit card unless I'm using Plastique or taking cash advance. It's too complicated, right? I cannot pay this credit card with another credit card if unless I do a balance transfer, and they don't give those out all the time, right? They only give this out when the credit card balance is zero because they just want you to spend again and hope that, like, you rack up charges for 12 months and then you can't pay it. You're only paying off the minimums, right? Like, that's the master plan. Because think about it. If you were the lender and you're trying to maximize your profit, you don't just give away free money, 0%, and hope that, oh, you'll pay it off within 12 months. No, you don't do that, right? But let's go ahead and move this 17 grand into this credit card debt. 17 grand. And then what happens here? Oh my goodness. This goes to zero. This goes to zero. Oh, let's calculate our cash flow now. Now we went from 1,700 to 2,200 without really doing anything, right? I just made a little tweak to my behavior. See how easy that was? I just went from 1,700 to 2,200 without doing anything, okay? And now what I'm going to do is put my entire paycheck into that line of credit, take my expenses out, and when I put my entire paycheck, the minimum monthly payment satisfies, so I don't even have to care about that. Now we're going to calculate the interest, but the payment itself doesn't really matter, okay? Number two, we're to minimize the interest because it's calculated by the average daily balance. And when you put your entire paycheck into that line of credit, it satisfies, or I'm sorry, it lowers the balance at its lowest point ever, right? At its lowest point ever, okay? At its lowest point, and therefore minimizing the interest. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do some calculations that I always do for every single video. We're going to calculate the next month. We're going to calculate the next month's balance. So it's the previous month's balance plus the previous month's interest and minus our cash flow. And as you can see here, our cash flow is 2245.17, right? And then on the interest here, what we do is we take the average daily balance, right? We take the average, multiply it by that interest rate, 0.15, and then we divide by 12. Okay, we just divide by 12 because it's the monthly interest. The interest calculated every month. Like, you're not going to get 15% interest on the average because think about it. If there's a lot of people out there with $100,000 credit card bills, they still manage to make the payments even though they're paycheck to paycheck. If I borrowed 17 grand or 14 to 17 grand or whatever the amount is, right, and I had to pay the equivalent of a mortgage payment on that, nobody would ever borrow money. That would be insane. It's 15% per year. Now, technically, you don't divide by 12. You divide by the number of months, and then you calculate, the average daily balance times the number of months, something like that, right? But this is good enough. Okay, and now what we do is we copy this, these three, and then we just copy and paste, and then our payoff is on the red, right? You see that? Our payoff is on the red. Okay. So now it took us 8 months to pay off 17K of debt. That was simple. Okay, and now our final debt is essentially the mortgage. Okay, is essentially the mortgage. Now, if you want to do this, put this entire 2,200. This will now go to your savings, right? Because we don't have a line of credit where you're putting your entire paycheck in. If you want to put your entire savings into that mortgage, you certainly can. Now, here's the thing. Ask yourself, would most people do that? Probably not. In fact, the average length or payoff of a 30-year mortgage, and this includes refinance as well, is about 52 to 55 years, right? So if you're in a position where you are have an extreme cash flow just because you didn't do something stupid like take out a student loan or even an auto loan, right? Like you got hand-me-down cars because you know how to not spend money on stuff you don't need. And again, always be safe. You want a good quality car. But back to my point, let's say you do have that max cash flow before the mortgage. Do you think the average person would put this $2,200 into that mortgage directly to save and pay it off quickly? The answer is probably not. Based on human behavior, based on statistics, theoretically, it would be a great decision and they could pay it off really quickly. But what happens here? Okay, I put this entire mortgage payment in, savings into my mortgage. Now, if I ever needed money again, I can't pull it out of the mortgage, right? I can't pull it out. Why is that? Because mortgages and loans are one-way streets, right? Like if you ever overpay a loan, like a student loan, you can't call them back and say, "Hey, I'm sorry, I know I overpaid you $1,000, but I'm trying to get $100 back because I got an emergency. Can you do that for me?" The loan company's not going to be your ATM. Now, here's the other thing too. What if you use your credit card as a backup? Okay. So what if you use a credit card as a backup? Then this leads, and again, this may not seem like a big deal now, and this may not even seem like a big deal for this person who has only about 3 debts, right? But I have seen people who make 10 grand, 11 grand after tax, right? Which is an insane income for like the average American is nowhere near that, right? And they are broke and scared. I've seen that, right? And how do they get there? The whole point of velocity banking, one of the tenets is that we're trying to prevent something called a segregation of income. And so if we put all of our cash in here, right, and then we're going to use our credit card as a backup, that's going to lead to segregation of income. Now, I need to do another video about someone who has like 15 debts and they're broke, right? Like I actually did that yesterday, I think. You could go to yesterday's video and look at that. But what I'm saying is that having one extra innocuous payment is eventually going to lead to that. And that's why you want to make sure that your paycheck goes into one place, right? All right. So enough of that. So here's the thing. If you want to put your entire cash flow into the mortgage directly, you can, or you can just use your line of credit. And this is kind of how I think of it. Almost like a safety belt when you go into a car, right? You want to prevent that segregation of income. And if is pretty much the same effect, and it doesn't, it actually helps you sleep at night because there's a lot of people I talk to who say, I can't put extra into the loan because what if I need that money? And they actually even have lines of credit as a backup and they're afraid to use it, right? So what we can do is just essentially move um, an amount similar to our paycheck, right? It doesn't have to be some huge amount to our line of credit. So think about this. Actually, let's calculate this. After 8 months, what would be our balance? So 8 months, what would be our balance on that loan? 197,000. Okay. 197,000. So 197. And if you take a look at this, look at all this. Oh, take a look at this number. That's no bueno. All right. So if you take a look at this, and after 8 months, you'll see pretty much most of your money went to interest, and very little of it goes to principal, meaning to the balance of the loan. Okay. So, how long do you think it'll take you to get from 197 to 187, right? We'll just do that. So 197 to 187, okay? So we'll just say here, 1 month, 2 month, 3 month, 4 month, 5 months, 6 months. Oh, let's say 5 months. This is a year. This is another year. And then this is almost another year. So I'll say about how many years? 1, 2, let's say 3 years, right? But let's say we just move $10,000 of that mortgage, so 187. We'll just move it to that line of credit and then use our cash flow to pay it off. So plus 10,000, and then how long does it take to pay off? In about probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 5 months, right? So something that's going to take you 3 years is just going to take you 5 months. It'll take you less because we didn't take into account we're making the payment as well. We kind of did, but we kind of didn't, right? But I'm just going to show you a calculator that I have access to, and this calculator was provided by Renatus because I'm a Renatus student. And full disclosure, I actually am an independent contract. They call us the independent contractor marketer. I sell their products and I make money, right? So let me go back here. Let's see. So let me go back here and we'll just put this information into the calculator. And it's really awesome because when you have huge amortized loans, right? Very big amortized loans. Oh, what happened here? Oh, let me reload this. Give me 1 second. Okay. It's very hard to really understand the effect that you're having doing incremental payoff, right? Especially because, there's a lot of calculations going into it. But I'm just going to put these numbers here. We'll just say the balance is about $200,000. And here's the thing, right? So many people get worked up about the interest rate, and I would always prefer a low purchase price, relative to the value. So let's say we bought a $200,000 home for about $300,000, right? I'm sorry, the other way around. A $300,000 home for $200,000 because the seller was distressed, because distressed properties are the best way to find good deals, right? Foreclosure, death in the family. You always want to look for those deals because if you buy most properties these days at market value, you're not going to cash flow, and you don't want to subsidize your tenant to stay in your house, right? Doesn't make any sense. Like the market rate for a rental and the market rate for home ownership are two things that are not directly correlated, right? Like if I go to Southern California, if I get a mortgage on a home, it's probably going to cost me maybe like $6,000 a month versus $3,000 a month to rent a home, right? Isn't that insane? Like again, the market is the market. Like the market price is a net effect of what buyers and sellers are willing to do. Okay, so don't think just because you bought a $300,000 home, you're going to magically rent it at a price that's proportional to the rent. The rent is the rent, and the buy price is the buy price. Okay, so just want to kind of explain that. And the other thing too, again, don't get too worked about the interest rate. The interest rate doesn't mean as much as the purchase price, because the purchase price is essentially a minimum of floor. So think about it. Let's say I have a $300,000 for 3% versus $150,000 at like 6% purchase price. I would definitely take the $150,000. Now, assuming that they're houses of uh, that are similar to each other, but most people love the low interest rate and they'll go gaga for the high purchase price, right? Now, again, I need to make a video on that. Okay, so let's go ahead and put in the information. I don't think this is the right payment amount, so 95483. Okay, and then we'll just do 5,000, right? And then 15% personal line of credit. Ooh, I wish. Oh, actually, I do have that $10,000 income in real life, but most people don't. Just humble bragging. Okay, so now 4,700 is our income, and our expenses are 1,500. All right, so expenses are everything except for the loan we're trying to pay off, and then you can see it takes us about 5.9 years to pay it off, right? So this is going to take so let's just say 5.9 plus 8 divided by 12, or 8. Yeah, 8 divide, no, is it times 12? It's times 12. Okay, so wait a minute, I screwed up. So 5.9 years, all right, it's divided by 12, my bad. All right, 6.5 years, okay, so 6.5 years and we're $217,000 debt free. Okay. And so now this becomes zero. And then this is 3,200 a month. So this would be really exciting. You might not even have to invest your money, just put in a 4% savings account or treasury or bonds or whatever, it'll be whatever is safe for you. Again, I'm not giving you investment advice, but once we're debt free, it's easier to breathe, right? Easier to breathe. Too many people, they focus on two things. They focus just on income rather than how much money they keep. Like, I'll be honest, if I were starting out in life, you know what I do? Instead of going to college, I take a minimum wage job because I start off with minimum wage, or sorry, zero debt, right? Like, I'd rather do that than like take $100,000, let's say student or law degree loan. And I'm not criticizing you if you're in that situation, because I work with a lot of lawyers. I'm gonna be real with you. But if you are in that situation where you're at a crossroads and thinking, what should I do with my life? And again, I'm not giving you direct advice. I'll tell you what I would do. I just take that minimum wage job and realize, after 3 to 6 months, holy crap, this sucks. I can't survive off this. And then think of every single way that I can make money, right? Rather than just going directly into that $100,000 loan without a clear path in mind. And then it's too late, realize, oh my goodness, I don't want to be a lawyer anymore. The turnover rate from a lot of professions is really high. You want to know the highest what's it called, occupation for self deletion is essentially medical, right? That's that should tell you right there that half of what's it called, half of I'm sorry, that income has nothing to do with happiness, right? Actually, let's just do um just a quick search for Google, highest occupation with highest rate of, oh, I don't even like to say this word. Okay. But you see that right here? It's the medical profession. Police officers, too. I totally understand that. What a high stress job. Financial services, real estate agents, ooh, electricians. I'm surprised that lawyers is kind of like at the bottom of this list. But I mean, when you're a top 10, top 8 is still kind of high. But yeah, not trying to joke because I know it's a serious issue. But all right, well, that's it for today. Simple, easy, you know. If you're interested in joining our group, go ahead and click the Google form link below. Other than that, happy Friday, everybody, because today is Friday if you're watching today, and we'll speak soon.